Oh, and welcome back to our member section. And we're speaking with Kat. Oh, I just love calling her Kat. She's here to help us to understand how to use our intuitive powers, our guides, using that field of knowledge that we all have, that universal field, as well as our angels, to understand how to maneuver through our relationships so that we can have relationships that are beautiful and peaceful, loving, and most of all, enduring. So, Kat, what do you believe is one of the biggest challenges in relationships today, and how does it tie into your story of prophetic guided dreams?
Well, I believe our biggest challenges in relationships today is believing in what we cannot see, feel, or hear, and that's our inner guidance. You know, that voice that kept us out of trouble as a child and may save us from making mistakes with relationships as an adult. When this guidance is at odds with logic, we need to take a step back and reassess the relationship. We are responsible for our happiness, and therefore we must self-advocate.
Now, I want to look at that. We need to step back and assess that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If some things are not working out with that logic, go deeper into that, please.
Well, there are a number of things that go on. A lot of people call them red flags, okay? And that's one way to look at them. Another way is gut instincts and inner guidance, voices in our head going, what? And it's our guides going, what is he saying to you? Are you going to believe that? And we don't listen to our guides. And all of the red flags and all of the gut instincts are there. And it's not until we've gotten hurt or we have married someone that our guides keep going, no, this isn't Mr. Right. This is Mr. Right now. You just need to learn from him and move on. And yet, what we needed to learn from him was how not to be in an abusive relationship, and yet we ignore our gut instincts, and we ignore those red flags, and we marry that person.
Right. Like
and
all
then we
the
have
words sound good, right? They're
all
saying
the words
exactly what we want to hear, but then that thing pops up and says, what?
At what moment?
We've all been there. We have been there. Wow. What about that little rebel within that wants to always keep stuff going?
Well, sometimes, we are made up, Tamara, of so much more than id, ego, and superego. We have our inner parents. We have our inner parents are that part of us that tries to keep everything regulated and keep us safe. And we've got our inner grandparents, and they're like the elephants in our relationships and in our mind. They forget nothing from this lifetime and past ones. And they like to drag everything out of our closets and go through it piece by piece with the woulda, coulda, shouldas,
Right,
and then we have our inner teenagers who are the rebels. They think that they are infallible and that they will live forever. And we have our inner children who are beams of light, who love to dance in the rain, and they like to splash in puddles, and they like to do all the things that when we grow up we're told we can't do anymore. And so that inner rebel is that inner teenager. And the other people within ourselves, in our minds, have got to get together and say, I'm sorry, but sweet Miss 16, you cannot have that bad boy. You can play with that bad boy for a while. You are not going to stay with that bad boy because we don't want to be with him all the time. It's time to let go and move on.
There's
And so
something
that's
to
where
learn
we've
there.
got to be able to be in connection with our inner guides and our inner selves that comes from within.
And we're not talking about Sybil multiple personalities here.
No,
That's
no.
not what we're talking about. Right?
No.
We're talking about the aspects of self.
The aspects of self, those parts of us that kick in during certain times of the day or certain situations. Your inner adult is who goes to work in the morning. And when you come home and you kick your shoes off and you sit on the floor and you eat popcorn with drippy, greasy fingers, that's your inner child.
Right,
We're
right.
all of those things, and we need to feed emotionally all of those aspects of ourselves, and we need to respect them, because those aspects of ourselves are going to get us through the worst times in our lives. We have to depend on them to get us through. During my darkest hours, when I heard that I had breast cancer again, the recurrence, it was back, I was devastated. I remember standing in my kitchen, putting my forehead down on the counter and starting to cry. And all of a sudden I started hearing these little voices in my head singing that Mickey Mouse song. We've done it before and we can do it again. Yes, we can do it again. And I suddenly realized it was my inner children. They were rallying behind me. And without those inner children and those inner adults rallying behind us, we're just not going to be nearly as successful as we could be.
Right. It's about being whole, right? I remember in school we heard about Carl Jung. He's that one that found all of those aspects of self. He said, I would rather be whole than good. Wholeness.
That's a great quote, because it's so true. You know, when you're good, what does that mean really? And let's take that into relationships. When we're good, we are good for whom? Not necessarily ourselves. We are trying to please somebody else. But when we're whole, we're pleasing ourselves. And that's important. When if we don't please ourselves first, then we cannot please anybody else. We have to please ourselves first. And the same thing with a relationship. If we are not the right person, we cannot find the right person.
There we go. It's all back to being that condition, right?
Yes.
Being that condition for it to take place. Now, how do these aspects of self, how do they connect with the dream? Because certainly you use dreams a lot.
Well, I was lucky in that when I was going through these challenges and felt so alone, because when you get a diagnosis of cancer or any life-threatening disease, you feel really alone, because chances are nobody else in your family is going through that. They can sympathize with you, but they can't empathize with you because they haven't gone through it or they're not going through it. They're not going to die. They're going to go on with their life when you're gone, and you kind of come to terms with that. But your inner selves are going through it with you. And so what happens is you often have these powwows in your dreams where you'll be having an epic dream. That's the dream that you have when you first fall asleep. You'll be going through an epic dream, and all of a sudden I get these pop-ups in my dreams. They're like pop-ups on a computer, and just as hard to get rid of. And I'll step through into what I call the room between realms, or it could also be the doorway to a deeper dream, a prophetic dream, or a lucid dream, which I often had. I knew I was dreaming, and I would see other aspects of myself in the dream. Like, for instance, this is really strange tomorrow. I know that people are going to go, what, when they hear this? But there's one boy in my dreams that is a part of me. His name is Billy. And all of this is in my book, Surviving Cancerland, by the way. And he's retarded. And I could always pick him out in the dreams, and he would show up in a number of different dreams because he was taller than everybody else. He was a teenager. He has dark hair, and he walks on his toes. He has a soft sign for brain damage. And I remember he walked up to me one time when I was in a dream, and he said, "Why are you bald?" And I started crying in my dream, and I'm like, how can he ask me this? I was having such a great dream, forgetting that I had cancer. And then this retarded kid walks up to me and asks me why I'm bald. And all of a sudden, all the other aspects of myself in that dream gathered around him when I started yelling at him. And they said, we all decided to get bald together. Remember, Billy? And he said, oh, yeah. And then I realized they didn't have hair either, in order that I would not feel like I was the only bald person in my inner family. They're all a part of our inner family. And so we have aspects of ourself in there, and we meet these aspects of self.
How have those dreams helped you with your 30-year marriage? Lasted for quite a long time.
Yeah, it really has. Well, I remember, anytime you're going through illness affects the whole family, including your relationship, your close family, your distant family, your friends, everybody. It changes everything. And if people say, "Oh yeah, well I got cancer, but nothing changed," I don't know. It changes everything because it changes you, your perception of life, your depth of intuition, and your depth of empathy. You've been in the foxhole of a very brutal war, and you survived. When you talk about cancer, you're talking from the trenches, and that's an experience other people have not had. So that gives you a level of empathy that they'll never have unless they go through that. So when you go through illness like this, it affects your relationships, including your marriage, because one of two things happens when a crisis like that comes about. You either become stronger or you fall apart. There's no in between. You don't stay the same. And so when I was going through my treatments with cancer, and many of the women in my treatment group, my radiation group, we became very close. Many of them had been deserted by their husbands. They left them for younger women, other women, secretaries, whatever, left them. And these women who were going through treatment were also raising their children, working full time for the insurance, and trying to make life as natural and normal for their kids as possible while being afraid of dying themselves and who's going to take care of their kids. So they were under tremendous stress. And I remember having some very deep conversations with them while we were waiting for our radiation treatments. And one of them said, I don't understand. I was always there for him. I always took care of him. I always put him first. I always put the family first. And as soon as I got sick, he left. And she looked at me and she said, can you, and then she got angry, which was good. And she looked at me and she said, can you explain that to me? And I said, well, you know what? An empty well can no longer give water. I said, even when you're on the airplane, they tell you, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And then the people sitting beside you and around you. You can't help others if you can't help yourself. And so, unfortunately, Tamara, because we are the caregivers in our families, in our relationships, even with many of our friends, we're born as women. We are born as caregivers. We suckle the children. We carry them for almost 10 months. We're the one that has to go into labor. We are the caregivers. It's a natural part of us. And what we don't realize is we have to be careful not to throw our pearls before the swine, as it is. If you find that you are giving, and you're not getting anything back, you're becoming an empty well. And as soon as you suddenly need something, those people who have just been taking advantage of you are going to go, oh, our Barbie doll is broken, and they're gone, off to find a new Barbie doll.
You know what? And then you give thanks, right? You give thanks. You wash your hands, right? And you move forward.
Except these women were like, I really need somebody. And we came to the conclusion that we were our somebody.
Yeah.
And we were a very close-knit group. And we were there for each other because we understood what each other was going through. And yeah, that gives you a real sense of strength. But it teaches you that if you are not the right person, you're not going to attract the right person. And what they were attracting was somebody who needed them because they needed to be needed. And that's something that we always have to watch out for as women, because we do have this desire to be needed.
Right.
But at the same time, we have to make sure that our needs are met as well. And we have to be very demanding about them sometimes, because let's face it, men are just grown-up little boys, and they're used to being coddled by their moms, who love them dearly, thinks the sun rises and sets in them, and to a degree it does. But then when they get married, you've got a mate, and sometimes you've got to lay some ground rules.
True.
I need for you to be there when I need you. And I was surprised that my husband really, really stepped up to the bat when I became ill. And I was surprised because, my husband comes from a Greek family. He's Greek American, and the men are used to being coddled. They're used to being the center of attention, the center of the universe, and all that good stuff. But when we found that I had the breast cancer the first time, my husband told his company, which was a huge company, international actually, because he's a real estate developer, that he was going to stay home and take care of me. And so any company business that needed to be done by conference calls or emails or fax.
Beautiful.
He was not leaving the house.
Now, I understand, Kat, that your dream showed you your husband when you were 9 years old.
They
How
did.
special is that?
They did. And it was one of those hot days in Germany. I was in Berlin at the time. And I was actually in Berlin when the wall went up, and that's in my book as well. But I was at a sleepover with my girlfriends, and our mothers were all sitting around the dining room table. And they were discussing our future, as mothers often do. And one of the mothers said, Kathy's going to be the first one married when she grows up because she's so pretty. And my mother looked at me, and we were sitting on the floor playing with our Barbie dolls, believe it or not. And I said, no, I'm not getting married first. I'm not going to get married until I'm 26 or 27. And everybody laughed. And my mom said, so somebody else said, and I suppose you're going to marry a prince, Kathy, because you're such a little princess. And I said, no, I'm marrying a millionaire. And everybody laughed. Mother was just sitting there in the chair staring at me because she knew that I was the one that drew auras and spoke with invisible people and had an invisible friend named Gigi. So she was, she was hearing this from a whole different level. Sure. And my mom said to me, well, what does he look like, Kathy? How do you know that? And I said, because I've seen him. And she said, really? Now she's thinking pedophile, right? And she goes, where have you seen him? And I said, I've seen him in my dreams. He sleeps next to me. His face is next to me. Mm-hmm. And she said, is it Gigi? And that was the name of my invisible friend back there. Right. He was like this 9-year-old boy. And I said, no, it's not Gigi. It's somebody else. And I see his face, and I know what his face looks like. And that's who I'm going to marry. I already know him. And so it's amazing because fast forward now many, many years till I'm 26, and I have gone to, of all things, a Sadie Hawkins Day party at a bar. One of my best friends is getting divorced, and she asked me to meet her there to talk about whether or not she was really making the right decision by leaving this guy. And I didn't realize it was Sadie Hawkins night. And anybody who read Little Abner cartoons in the newspaper, remember Little Abner had Daisy May, and Sadie Hawkins was the really ugly daughter of the mayor of Dogpatch. And so once a year, all the really ugly daughters in Dogpatch would have a race. And if they could catch the bachelors that were running away from them, then the bachelors got dragged off to church where the father held a gun on them, and they got married. And so here I was at the spinster at a Sadie Hawkins Day dance in a grungy bar that I never go to. And when we went through the door, we were given these women were given bolts to hold, and the guys were given screws. So you found your little Abner when they were able to screw your bolts. And I was like, I'm out of here.
Oh, I love it.
Just as I was leaving, walked Peter, and I recognized him from the pillow. While I was throwing my bolts over my shoulder going, I'm getting out of here before some Neanderthals screw fits my bolt. In he walked, and we were married 3 years later.
Beautiful. That's something. So you remember those dreams from the time you were 9 years old. What if someone listening can't remember their dreams?
Well, I didn't remember that dream until Peter walked in the room. It had been stored away. We remember everything. Our minds are incredible computers. And when and the circumstance is right, you'll get it in a daydream. It will be triggered. Something will trigger it, and it'll come back. And that's when, if you've been journaling all along and something like that happens, you can go into your journals and say, I remember that was in journal 1. It was right around Christmas, and go flipping back through there and then get all this important information that gives you the edge.
Exactly.
He didn't know that we were getting married when he met me. He didn't have a clue. Even 4 months later, when I knew for sure, he still didn't get it. But I had the edge. I had the dream.
Now, you've broken down dreams into different categories. There are 7 different categories, and of course, some of them are going to overlap. If you would, just share those different categories with our listeners.
Sure. We have daydreams, which are so important. We just don't give enough importance to daydreams. And that's when you awaken, but you're no longer focused on a task. You're wide awake, and it's a lot like meditation and prayer. And daydreams are I always say daydreams are when your mind wanders to the beach of the ocean of gnosis. It collects all kinds of information, runs into all kinds of people out there on the beach as well. So daydreams are really important in our working environment. You've got a task, you're beating your brains against the wall trying to figure out how to get something done, and finally you just throw your hands up and go, I give up, and you lean back and you stare out the window and boom, there's the answer. Why? Because your mind took off to the ocean of gnosis and picked up all the information that has ever been, ever will be, because there is no past, present, and future. It's all now. Picks it up, brings it back, lickety-split, and you've got your answer. So daydreams can also give you little snippets of night dreams that you forgot about, when the information in that night dream is important to that particular situation and time. So that brings us to lucid dreams. And lucid dreams are very cousins of the daydream, because you're dreaming, and because you're dreaming, you can actually control the outcome, and that can change your life forever for the better.
Certainly.
So with a lucid dream, let's say, for instance, I had a client that called me up and said, Kathy, I am never, ever going to sleep again. I have been having a lucid nightmare for the past 10 years, and I can't take it anymore. I'm in such a bad mood. My relationship with my husband has devolved to the point of we're talking divorce. And she says, and I don't really care. I'm too tired to deal with him and his problems. And she's going on and on and on. I said, okay, so Linda, tell me about your dream. And she said, well, as soon as I fall asleep, I have the same dream. I'm sitting on my couch in the living room. It's dark at night. I'm watching TV, and my husband's sitting beside me when there's a knock at the door. And I tell my husband, ignore it. But he stands up to answer the door, and I say, no, don't answer the door. But he opens it, and in walks my dead father. He looks at me and he says, Linda, I love you. I scream, wakes me up out of my dream, and I can't go back to sleep. I've got a headache. I'm so upset. And I said, well, Linda, what part of that dream is upsetting you? The fact that your father walked into the room, or that he's dead? And she said, both. She says, I couldn't stand my father. I couldn't stand him. He's been dead for 10 years, and I'm so glad I can hardly stand it. She says, I don't want him in my dream. I didn't want him in my life. And how dare he come into my dream? And I said, well, Linda, you let him in. That man sitting beside you, your husband, is your husband within, that male protective part of you. And he must know something about letting your dad into that dream that you have not figured out yet. So let's figure this out together. You're saying you can't stand your dad. The fact that he's coming into your dream is waking you up and making you angry. You're waking up, in a bad mood, and you can't go back to sleep. I said, you have to remember something. Even though he's dead, there's that inner child within you that is still daddy's little girl. And daddy's little girl must want daddy to come and reassure her that he does love her, even though he's passed over, or he wouldn't be there. I said, the other thing is our loved ones, when they pass over, often have to, they have time to think about what they did to us, on the earth plane, and how the things that they affected us in our relationships, especially our relationships. And I said, he's coming back to let you know that he's sorry and that he does love you. And I said, and he had to get permission to come back. He's not allowed to come back otherwise. So she says, well, what do I do to make him stop? I don't want him coming back anymore. I said, well, you're going to have to acknowledge him. And I said, the best thing to do is the next time there's a knock on the door, you stand in your power and you get up and you open the door. And when he says he loves you, you speak your truth because your inner child's going to be speaking. You say, Daddy, I love you too. And she says, I don't think I can do that. I said, well, do you want that dream to keep going on? Do you want that nightmare to continue? She said, no. I said, okay, then you know what to do. Yeah. So a week goes by and I don't hear from her. And then the phone rings. And it's Linda. And she goes, I've got to tell you, I had that nightmare again. And when there was the knock on the door, I told my husband not to get up. I was going to answer it. She says, I went to the door and I was starting to wake up and I told myself, no, stay in the dream, stay in the dream. And I opened the door and my dad walked in and said, Linda, I love you. And she said, Kathy, I can't believe it. I threw my arms around his neck and I said, Daddy, I love you too. And the dream ended. I felt so good. And she says, I haven't had the dream since. And my husband and I are talking things out now. She says, I think I was just so tired and so depressed that I didn't want to deal with any other issues. I was just dealing with that dream. And she says, but I haven't had it anymore. So she changed the ending of that lucid dream, and she changed her life, especially her relationships, forever. That's how important lucid dreams are.
That is so very key. Now, that's that reoccurrent dream, and it also covers the nightmare aspect.
Exactly. It's recurring because you didn't get it the first time or solve it, which she didn't, so it kept coming back. And the nightmare because she couldn't forget it. How could you forget that information? She says, I never remember my dreams, but she remembered every detail of that nightmare.
Yeah, and it's really important. Yeah.
Really important information. It's actually a blessing in disguise. Our nightmares are blessings in disguise, and we need to face them, just as we need to face our nightmares in life, in the waking world, like cancer. We need to face our nightmares in the sleeping world because they're always interconnected. There's always a thread that runs between our waking world and our sleeping world. So then that brings us to our healing. That was also a healing dream for her. That lucid dream was an emotional healing dream, but you can also get physical information in a healing dream. For instance, I got information when I was going through my treatment and broke out in shingles. My guides came to me in my dreams and told me to drink kombucha tea. And it cleared them right up. It was amazing.
It really is. They were right there. Wow.
Yeah. And then
how about the prophetic ones? Yeah.
Yeah, the prophetic dreams are awesome. And the prophetic dreams, you don't always know they're prophetic until later, obviously, because you have to have some validation in the waking world. You have to have validation there. So my validation was, pathology reports, the fact that drinking the kombucha tea cleared up the shingles. So your prophetic dreams are really important for connecting you to your guides and giving you the confidence to believe in them. So at first, with the pathology reports, that gave me that validation right away, which I was like, yes, my guides are really on here and the doctors are wrong. But later on, some of those prophetic dreams didn't have the validation for another 5 years. But it didn't matter. As soon as I got the validation, I immediately remembered the dream, put the two together and said, yes, this is it. I know where I am right now. And then again, our epic dream, that's the one where we start out at night, we fall asleep, and sometimes we wake up in the morning still dreaming that same epic dream, and we think that's all we dreamed during the night, when in fact we could have gone through all those other 6 dreams during the night, because we dream between 5 and 6 times during the night.
Wow. Now, what about people who say they don't dream at all? Now, I know we all go into REM, or else we wouldn't be going into sleep. But some people just say they don't dream.
Well, everything and everyone does dream. Even, believe it or not, a fetus being carried by its mother, when it is 14 weeks old, that fetus begins to have REM because they see it on ultrasound. And it really begs the question, what is that little guy tracking in there? What's he looking at? The angels?
Exactly. You wonder.
He hasn't been born yet.
He doesn't have any life experience that's collected in his consciousness, but as we know, we have a collective consciousness, right?
Right, that's hypnosis, exactly.
Exactly. And so that takes me to the question about symbols. Now, certainly everyone's subconscious mind, according to their background, their experiences, even culture and religion, might have different representations or symbols for different meanings.
Exactly. And that's why dream dictionaries are great in helping you to learn your dream language, because we're born bilingual. We are born with our waking language, and we are born with our sleeping language. It's an innate bilingualism that we have. And so we tend to forget that as we get older, and so we have to relearn that language. When a child is born, it makes every single sound for every language in the world, every language that's spoken. And then as our parents speak to us, we forget all the other sounds, like the rolling of the R, the guttural R in the Germans, or the nasal R of the French, or the Spanish R off the tip of the tongue. We learn those, and we just do the American hard R, unless you're from Boston, where you don't do R's at all. You park the car. But, so we learn that language, and the same is true with our dream language. We forget that dream language. We don't use it anymore. And so by building our dream journal and underlining words that are important to us and what they mean to us, building our own definition using universal symbolism, the same symbolism that Jung and many other psychotherapists used, we can hook into that universal symbolism as well and start to build our own dream language and our own dream dictionary. And then we can decipher our dreams really, really quick. We look at that and we know what we're saying to each other or to ourselves. Like the Kundalini is a big snake. When I see a snake in a dream, I know that's a dream with information for me that is spiritual, whereas somebody else who has a deathly fear of snakes is not going to see Kundalini. They're going to be running. And so then their universal language or their inner guides need to speak to them about universal knowledge and wisdom with a different symbol other than the snake. And there are others, like an apple falling out of a tree on their head.
Sure.
Something else will teach them that.
Now, if dreams are still challenging, you can't really tie them together, you can't really figure out what the symbolic meaning might be for you, how about those emotions or those feelings? What would that tell you? Feelings like happiness, sadness, frightened, content, even being anxious.
Well, those are very important for helping you remember your dreams. And that's one of the 6 easy steps that, again, is in that free download for everybody on my Access Your Inner Guide webpage. It's in that little guidebook. And so you don't have to remember these as you're listening to this radio show. You can just go there and get them. They're yours for free. And so one of the things, if your dream is still really elusive, you write down your feelings. Were they happy, sad, frightened, content, or were you anxious? Because sometimes when you write that down, it can trigger the dream, just like a color, which is step number 4. Write down a color that pops into your head while you're trying to remember the dream, because we are so tied into color in this world. We have auras. Our auras are full of colors. We have chakras. Our chakras are full of color. You have a favorite color. You have a color you can't stand. And so these colors are important. And when they are in your dream is talking to you. So then you can also give your dream a title, even if it's a dream without a name, or the dream about yellow, or the dream about the apple. Those are, that is what you will go back to when during the day you're having daydreams that trigger that night dream that you couldn't remember. You know where to go back and put the information in, whether it's scribbled on your lunch receipt, whether it's scribbled on a piece of toilet paper. You just tape it into your dream journal. That's what I did. And so if some part of the dream returns during any day, you jot it down. And so then over time, your dreams are going to become longer as you begin to interface with yourself and your guides. And remember, you have guides, and you are their job. And meeting your guides in your dreams is just a wonderful step to a more fulfilling life.
Oh, most definitely. Just as in every relationship, as we started this show out, that it's all about creating the positive relationships, not just with the loved ones, your mate, children, friends, but also those guides, and as you said in another program, that it is their job to take good care of us. So it's important that we acknowledge that and we give gratitude for that.
Absolutely, and they just love to get that acknowledgement. So then I think another really important way to help yourself remember your dreams is to verbally voice your intention to remember your dream before you go to sleep. Put it out to the universe. Tell the universe you want to remember your dream tonight. Or if you have a question that would help solve a challenge in your life, you can put that question out like I did. I said, I'd really like to, see my parents. Are they okay? I'd like for them to see me. And guess what? There they were. So you can do the same thing. You can write your question down or your intention down, and you can put it under your pillow. And by doing that, you're pulling that intention out of the 4th dimension and pulling it into the 3rd dimension where we all live. Right. And that's exactly what you want to do with your dream. You want to pull it out of that 4th dimension and have it available to you in the 3rd dimension when you wake up. And that's where early morning dreams are the easiest to remember. And so that's why it's so important to keep a notebook beside your bed so that when you awaken, you can write down what you remember, whatever it is. You don't want to have to hunt around for your notebook or your pen or a piece of paper. Otherwise, you may forget it. Right. So if that happens and you're still having trouble remembering your dream, lie back down in bed in the same position you were in when you woke up and try to remember anything at all.
Those are the times when I have the most prophetic dreams. Those are times when I will, if you will, I will fast forward in time and see things before they take place and in really vivid detail. But it's also the times when questions that I had, some perplexing problem that I needed to solve, I'll wake up with the answer. My guy will say, you wake up and you'll say like one word. I'll say a word like turtle or just one word, and it happens to be the answer. And I don't even know where it came from or why I said the word, but somehow it ties into exactly what I needed. It's really amazing.
And so in your journal, that would be the title of your dream, turtle.
Turtle.
And then throughout
right?
the day, you might have little snippets from your daydreams about that night dream. And you would know where to go to put it in.
Fascinating. Wow. Now, as we round this talk out, I just want to get back to relationships to finish it out.
Mm-hmm.
If you could just put it in a nutshell, why is it so important to use our intuition? I mean, it might sound obvious, As I say it, it sounds kind of obvious to me, but the importance of really trusting those dreams in keeping that relationship strong.
Well, if you have to remember that everything that you do, your guides are backing you on it. And so when you hit those potholes in life, and you're going to hit them, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees because the challenges are so big. And but you have to remember that your guides can. They can not only see the forest for the trees, they can see the path in the forest, and they can lead you along it. They're kind of your GPS. And so when you hit those challenges in your relationships, whether it's with your loved one, whether it's with your family, whether it's with friends or your job, your guides already know what the challenge is going to be and how you can move through it in a way where you will learn, but not necessarily continue to make the wrong mistakes. You
right.
get into this circle and you can't get out. Your guides can help you break that vicious circle.
That old that teenager that might be messing things up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, you think about that you have guides, you have guardian angels, but so do all the other people that you have relationships with. Now, do these guides interact with one another?
Oh, they do. They really do. Yeah. Your husband's guides will talk to your guides, who will then talk to you. And then you will talk to your guides, and your guides will talk to your husband's guides, who might talk to him during the night in a dream. Yeah, that does happen.
Right.
I mean, you're here on the earth plane to fulfill a purpose. I mean, right. Even though your parents may tell you just happened in the back seat of a Ford, you didn't. Nobody happened. We're all here for a reason. And so most of us do find the right relationship. But sometimes because we don't connect with our inner guidance, we fall down in those bumps in the road, and we don't always get back up. And so that's why it's so important to connect with our guides, with relationships. We're with the right people, but it doesn't mean that we can't still destroy that relationship, in which case we might have to do it again in the next life.
Exactly, because we do have free will. No matter how much excellent and perfect information we get, we still get to choose.
Right. And I remember people saying to me, well, how did you not get divorced? How have you been married for 33 years and you did not get divorced? And I go into a whole chapter in that in my book where I'm talking to myself literally in the bubble bath, because I'm thinking that I just can't take some of the challenges I'm getting from family members and their effect on my husband. And I remember thinking, you know what? If I were to get divorced, I would probably have the same problems with the next man I marry. So why not just in this one, because I'm already invested in it, and work them out? Mm-hmm. And I remember in a dream, one of my guides or God saying, I didn't pick a perfect man for you. Right. I picked the perfect man for you at this time. Mm-hmm. And so go and grow together and get over this.
That is so
we
beautiful.
did. So the answer to how do you not get divorced? You don't get divorced. That's the answer.
Well, short of abuse, if someone is abusing you, there's something wrong there. And sometimes it is time to end it if you need to protect yourself and your children. Most definitely.
Yes, but you usually know that before 33 years. And most people, you really need to give yourself enough time that if there are going to be red flags, they go up.
Exactly.
And if there are going to be problems, you can solve them before you're married, because whatever your problems are before you get married, multiply them by 10 after you get married. That's a real life.
Right. This woman speaks wisdom. Oh, I just love it. You know, I just look forward to the next time we get together. You are just a joy, and you've said yes. Apparently,
I
you
have
a mission, and somebody said, you know what? You've got stuff to do, and you have people to wake up, and you chose, and you said yes. Send me.
Mm-hmm.
Kathleen O'Keefe Canavas. Oh, she's an intuitive life coach, as you can see, and we're just so grateful to have her here. I thank you, members, for supporting this good work, and I just invite you to go over to her website and to support her work as well. Before we leave this particular episode, please, again, share your information, Kat, so that they can get over there and partake of those wonderful gifts.
Certainly. Thank you, Tamara. Well, you can go to accessyourinnerguide.com, and there is a free download for you there. 7 ways to access, awaken, and activate your inner guidance. And in there is a little dream journal for you. You can download it and get started right away on journaling your dreams, which I encourage everybody to do because it's such an important part of our lives. And then there's also another website, which is www.survivingcancerland.com. And that website is for anybody who's either going through cancer or is a caregiver to somebody who is, or has a friend who's going through it, because I have so many articles there from the R.A. Block Cancer Foundation. I'm actually one of their hotline counselors, and there's so much there for people being challenged by this illness to help them get through it and realize that they're not alone. And on both of these websites, I'm going to have the pre-order link for my book, Surviving Cancerland, The Intuitive Aspects of Healing. And in that book, I actually show you how to break down the dreams the way I did, the way I had to figure it out, and come up with those pearls of wisdom in those dreams that saved my life. So any of you who are into dreams or are being challenged in any way in life, or just want to read how somebody else was able to connect with their inner guides and help you connect with your inner guides, make sure you get that book. And the first 3 people who sign up through tomorrow gets a free book that I am going to autograph for them.
Excellent. And all you have to do is email me. You'll see all the links right here next to this particular audio. Mm-hmm. Oh, I just thank everyone so much for joining us. What a beautiful world it is. Life is good. Life is good. All right. Peace and blessings. And take excellent care of yourself.